Johnny Depp ambled into the sprawling East London film studio, a cavernous relic of industrial Shoreditch reborn as a soundstage, his pirate boots thudding against the cracked concrete floor, tricorn hat tilted rakishly over his brow, coal-smeared eyes glinting with a manic, untamed fire, his tattered coat billowing behind him like a tempest as he fully inhabited Jack Sparrow, a character worlds apart from Elias Grimm. The dour Victorian Undertaker scripted for this gothic drama, The Undertaker's Lament. The crew froze mid-task, grips clutching coiled cables that snaked across the set like black serpents, wardrobe assistants cradling armfuls of somber frock coats and starched collars, lighting technicians pausing as they adjusted massive spotlights that bathed the faux Victorian parlor in a sickly yellow glow, their mouths agape as Johnny swaggered through the chaos, twirling a rusted umbrella he'd swiped from a cluttered prop table piled high with candelabras and dusty ledgers, his gold-capped teeth flashing under the harsh studio lights, a living monument to a pirate he couldn't, or wouldn't, release from his soul. He'd spent the previous night barricaded in his Camden flat, a labyrinthine den of velvet curtains, flickering candles, and mismatched furniture scavenged from flea markets, drowning in a sea of rum bottles and nostalgia-drenched memories, the flickering glow of a battered TV replaying Pirates of the Caribbean on an endless loop, his mind spiraling through sleepless hours until he'd convinced himself that Elias Grimm, this stiff, joyless mortician, desperately needed a transfusion of Sparrow's roguish charm to escape the script's suffocating gloom, a decision forged in a crucible of rum and a stubborn refusal to let go of the pirate who defined him for decades. The studio thrummed with the frenetic energy of a first day, carpenters hammering together a creaking wooden staircase, extras in top hats and bustles shuffling nervously near a faux fireplace, a production assistant with a headset barking orders over the din of drills and shouted cues. But Johnny's entrance sliced through it all like a cannonball through a ship's hull, his swaying gait, jangling rings, and slurred pirate drawl announcing not just his arrival but his intent to rewrite the rules, to reshape this somber tale into something wilder, something truer to the chaos he carried within, heedless of the meticulous vision the director had spent months constructing. The director, Nigel Hawthorne, a wiry Londoner with a hawkish nose, thinning grey hair swept back in a futile bid for dignity, and a reputation for tyrannical precision, emerged from his makeshift office, a plywood cubicle cluttered with coffee cups and dog-eared scripts, his clipboard clutched like a talisman, his pinched features twisting into a scowl as he registered Johnny's dreadlocks spilling from beneath the hat, the tattered coat flapping like a jolly Raja, the pirate swagger that mocked the gothic restraint he'd painstakingly crafted for this film, a vision of muted despair now threatened by this garish intrusion. Depp, what in the bleeding hell do you think you're playing at? Hawthorne snapped, his voice a sharp, venomous hiss cutting through the ambient clamor, his bony finger stabbing the air as he stormed across the set, his polished brogues clicking with furious intent, his gray eyes narrowing into slits of pure, unadulterated rage, the crew instinctively retreating as the air thickened with the promise of a confrontation that could shatter the fragile order of this first day's shoot. Johnny tilted his hat with a theatrical flourish, flashing that crooked, gold-flecked grin that had disarmed 1,000 cameras, and slurred in Sparrow's lilting cadence, "Oi, mate, reckon OL, Elias be a dreary sod without a splash o' pirate flair. Thought I'd liven him up, savvy," before spinning the umbrella with a twirl that sent a cloud of dust spiraling into the air, winking at a stunned grip who fumbled a hammer, his commitment to the persona unshaken even as Hawthorne's face flushed a dangerous shade of crimson, his jaw clenching so tight it seemed his teeth might crack under the strain. "This isn't your sodding pirate circus, you insufferable prat," Hawthorne roared, lunging forward to snatch the umbrella from Johnny's grip, pulling it across the set where it crashed into a stack of wooden crates with a splintering thud, his voice trembling with a fury that bordered on hysteria as he waved the script like a sacred text, ranting about the months of pre-production meetings, the endless casting auditions, the budget battles with tight-fisted producers, and the sheer bloody gall of Johnny showing up as a rum-soaked caricature instead of the brooding, restrained Undertaker he'd signed on to portray, his vision for the Undertaker's lament crumbling before his eyes. Johnny, utterly unfazed, leaned against a prop coffin, a gleaming oak monstrosity draped in black crepe and adorned with brass handles, fishing a crumpled cigarette from the depths of his coat pocket, lighting it with a lazy flick of his battered Zippo, exhaling a slow, deliberate plume of smoke that curled toward the rafters as he muttered, "Art's a messy beast, Nige. Thought a director worth his salt'd see the brilliance in a bit o' chaos." His tone dripping with mockery, his eyes narrowing with A glint of steel beneath the playfulness, daring Hawthorne to escalate the brewing storm, the set holding its breath as the two men circled each other like duelists on a fog-shrouded deck. Hawthorne's hands balled into fists, his knuckles whitening under the strain, his voice rising to a near scream that echoed off the high ceilings. Brilliance. You're a walking catastrophe, a washed-up relic clinging to a character nobody's given a toss about in years. Get off my set before I throw you out myself, his words reverberating through the studio, the crew exchanging wide-eyed glances, some edging closer to intervene, others retreating behind cameras and flats, the set teetering on the edge of outright pandemonium as Johnny stubbed out his cigarette on the coffin's polished lid, straightened up with a creak of leather, and stepped into Hawthorne's space, his grin fading into a hard, unyielding line that hinted at the fire smoldering beneath the pirate's facade. Throw me out, eh? Johnny growled, dropping the Sparrow accent for a moment, his voice low and raw as he loomed over the shorter man. I'm here to work, not kiss your arse. Shoot it my way, or we've got a real row on our hands, mate. His boots scuffing the concrete, his posture shifting into something coiled and dangerous, the pirate's bravado melding with a deeper, more personal defiance that crackled like a live wire between them. The air thick with the scent of tobacco, sawdust, and impending violence. Hawthorne flinched, his eyes darting nervously, then shoved Johnny's chest with both hands, shouting, "You're a liability, a has-been who can't let go of a bloody pirate," his push sending Johnny stumbling back into the coffin, which tipped and crashed to the floor with a thunderous crack, splinters flying as the crew gasped, some shouting warnings, others scrambling for cover, the set descending into a maelstrom as Johnny regained his footing, his eyes blazing with a fury that wasn't play acting anymore, the line between character and man dissolving into a haze of rage and rum-soaked pride. "Can't let go," Johnny snarled, shoving Hawthorne back with twice the force, his rings glinting as he swung. "Jack's more alive than your dreary little film will ever be. Let's dance, you pompous twat," his fist clipping Hawthorne's shoulder, the director staggering into a lighting stand that toppled with a screech of metal, the crew erupting in chaos, shouts of "stop it," and "someone grab him," mingling with the clatter of falling gear. The fight spiraling into a full-blown brawl as Johnny lunged again, fueled by a volatile cocktail of defiance, nostalgia, and the unshakable belief that Sparrow's spirit could salvage this sinking ship of a production. Hawthorne ducked a second wild swing, his voice breaking as he scrambled backward, yelling, "You're unhinged. I'm calling the bloody coppers, you maniac," his hands fumbling for his phone, dialing 999 with trembling fingers, his breath ragged as he shouted into the receiver about assault and a deranged actor disrupting my set, his authority crumbling while Johnny laughed, a harsh, piratical cackle that rang out over the chaos, snatching up the umbrella again, brandishing it like a cutlass, his dreadlocks swinging as he advanced, the Sparrow persona consuming him entirely, a man lost in the role he'd carried for decades, unable, or unwilling, to step out of Jack's shadow even as Hawthorne retreated behind the camera rig, his face a mask of terror and triumph. The crew parted like the Red Sea, some filming the melee on their phones, others yelling for security, as Johnny swung the umbrella wildly, shouting, "Come on, Nige, let's see if you've got the guts to take on a pirate proper," his voice booming over the pandemonium, his movements erratic but deliberate, a man so entrenched in Sparrow's world that he saw Hawthorne not as a director but as a rival captain, the set attack, the fight a battle for supremacy, his refusal to yield a testament to the pirate's enduring hold on his psyche. Two Metropolitan Police officers burst through the studio doors minutes later, their dark uniforms cutting through the artificial fog of the Victorian set, truncheons at their hips, faces stern as they shoved past gawking extras in top hats and bustles, Hawthorne pointing frantically at Johnny, his voice shrill as he ranted about violence and threats, while Johnny, chest heaving, tossed the umbrella aside and raised his hands, smirking through smeared coal. "Just a bit, oh, sport, lads. No need to fuss over a scuffle, his nonchalance infuriating Hawthorne further, the director's tirade growing more hysterical as the officers closed in, their boots thudding on the concrete, their presence a stark intrusion into the theatrical madness Johnny had unleashed. The taller cop, a broad-shouldered man with a scarred cheek and a voice like gravel, grabbed Johnny's arm, barking, "Hands behind your back, sir. Assault's not a game, pirate or not," while his partner, a wiry young constable with a buzz cut and a nervous twitch, flanked him, radio crackling as Hawthorne demanded they haul this lunatic away, his victory soured by the chaos still swirling around them, the set a shambles of overturned props, shattered decorum, and a lingering haze of cigarette smoke that clung to the air like a ghost. Assault. Over a shove and a swing, Johnny protested, twisting as they wrestled him toward the exit. This is a bleeding film set, not a courtroom. Tell this kid to sod off and let me work. But the officers tightened their grip, dragging him past the stunned crew, his tricorn hat tumbling to the floor, dreadlocks tangling as they shoved him into the back of a police van parked outside, its siren wailing as it sped off down the narrow Shoreditch streets. Leaving the studio in a stunned, echoing silence, the day's shoot irrevocably derailed. The crew left to pick up the pieces of a set and a film, now fractured beyond repair. At the Bethnal Green police station, a squat, gray building reeking of stale coffee, disinfectant, and the faint tang of despair, Johnny sat cuffed across from a desk sergeant, his coat torn at the sleeve, his rings clinking against the metal table, arguing through a haze of lum and adrenaline that he'd only been defendant Jack's honor against a tyrant, his words slurring slightly as he leaned forward, the Sparrow drawl creeping back in despite the gravity of the situation, while Hawthorne, summoned to give his statement, paced the room, his bruised shoulder exaggerated into a tale of savage attack, his voice rising with every retelling, demanding Johnny face proper consequences for his delusional outburst, his indignation fueled by a mix of wounded pride and a desperate need to reclaim control. The sergeant, a weary man with bags under his eyes and a perpetual frown, scribbled notes on a yellow legal pad, unimpressed by Johnny's pirate-tinged defense and Hawthorne's theatrics, but the evidence, dozens of witnesses, a bruised director, a trashed set, and grainy phone footage circulating online, piled up like a noose, and within hours, a magistrate slapped Johnny with house arrest pending a full hearing, fitting him with an ankle monitor, confiscating his rum-stained coat as evidence, and confining him to his Camden flat, a self-made prison where Jack Sparrow's spirit still roamed free, defiant even under the weight of the law's chains, the pirate's legacy unshaken by the cold steel now encircling his leg. Back in Camden, Johnny paced the cluttered living room of his flat, a sprawling maze of velvet curtains in deep burgundy, scattered guitars leaning against walls papered with peeling Victorian floral patterns, half-finished paintings propped on easels, and shelves groaning under the weight of books, trinkets, and oddities collected from decades of wandering, the ankle monitor's red light blinking incessantly, a nagging reminder of his confinement, his bare feet scuffing the hardwood as he muttered to himself, Jack'd have outfoxed M, slipped the cuffs, nicked the van, sailed off Logan, with a bottle in hand, his mind replaying the fight, the arrest, Hawthorne's smug retreat, a restless fire smoldering in his chest as he gripped a fresh bottle of rum, plotting defiance even within these walls, the pirate's spirit a lifeline in the suffocating stillness. The flat's tall windows overlooked the Regent's Canal, a sluggish ribbon of water reflecting the grey London sky, its surface rippling with the occasional barge or duck, and Johnny stood there often, staring out, the monitor's hum a constant drone, imagining Jack at the helm of the Black Pearl, navigating storms far grander than this petty squabble, his refusal to shed the pirate a quiet rebellion against the director, the cops, the world that demanded he conform, leave Sparrow behind, and become someone, anyone, else, his reflection in the glass a shadowed figure, dreadlocks wild, eyes haunted, a man caught between two lives, neither willing to let the other go. He'd lost the role, of course. Hawthorne fired him via curt email, CC&G the producers, the press already gorging on headlines like Depp Sparrow tantrum trashes set, pirate star cuffed in London meltdown, and Johnny Depp's latest disaster. From Captain Jack to criminal, but Johnny didn't care, didn't read them, didn't flinch. Jack was alive, thrumming in his veins, a pulse no anklet could silence. No director could kill, no court could judge, and that was worth every bruise, every fine. Every day locked in this gilded cage, a truth he clung to as the world spun its tales beyond his reach. Days bled into weeks, the monitors beat a metronome to his exile, and Johnny filled the time strumming his Gibson, its strings worn from years of restless playing, painting wild seascapes on scavenged canvas, crashing waves, storm-tossed ships, a lone figure at the helm, scribbling lyrics about freedom and defiance on scraps of paper that littered the floor, the flat becoming a shrine to Sparrow's enduring reign. His voice low as he sang to himself, they can chain me legs, but not me soul. Jack still sailing, still whole, through tempests and trials untold, the rum bottle never far, the pirate's spirit a shield against the creeping boredom, the looming trial, the world's judgment pressing in from beyond the walls, a world he'd once ruled now reduced to whispers and headlines he refused to hear. Hawthorne, meanwhile, recast Elias Grimm with a safer choice, a Darth Theater actor named Rupert Finch, a man of pinched features and no flair, no fight, no spark, and the film limped on, its gothic heart dimmed without Johnny's chaos, the director crowing to the press about restoring order and salvaging the vision, his victory hollow as whispers spread of a set now sterile, a story now flat, a vision compromised by his own rigidity, his refusal to see what Johnny had tried to offer, even if it came wrapped in dreadlocks, madness, and a brawl that had left his shoulder bruised and his ego battered beyond repair. Johnny's lawyer, a slick barrister named Simon Hargrove with a penchant for high-profile messes and a wardrobe of tailored suits, worked the case from afar, phoning daily with updates, negotiations with the Crown Prosecution Service, plea deals floated like lifelines, Hawthorne's insistence on justice growing shriller with each interview. But Johnny waved it off, sprawled on a velvet sofa, muttering, "Let him try me." Jack's faced worse than a London magistrate, worse than a dozen Hawthorns. His faith in the pirate unshaken, his defiance a lifeline as the anklet chafed, the flat's walls seeming to close in tighter with each passing day, the rum his only crew now, a silent companion in this storm of his own making. One night, deep into his confinement, a storm rolled over London, rain lashing the windows with a ferocity that rattled the panes, thunder booming like cannon fire over the rooftops, and Johnny stood on his balcony, anklet be damned, the monitor's range just stretching far enough, strumming a mournful tune on his Gibson, the wind whipping his hair, his voice rising over the gale. "Here's to ye, Jack, King o' the Lobes, Scourge o' the Stiffs, Master o' the Seas and me heart, the city sprawling." Below, its lights flickering like a sea of stars, Camden's chaos a faint echo of the Caribbean he carried inside, the pirate unbroken even as the law held him fast, the storm a mirror to the tempest raging within him, a man who'd rather sing into the night than bow to the silence. The trial loomed, a distant shadow on the horizon, but Johnny didn't fear it. Fines, probation, even jail couldn't strip him of Sparrow, couldn't erase the man he'd become under that hat, behind that grin, the man who'd fought a director, defied the cops, and turned a film set into a battlefield, all to keep Jack alive, to prove he wasn't a relic, wasn't done, wasn't ready to fade into the gray conformity Hawthorne demanded. His spirit a flame that burned brighter in confinement, fueled by every note, every sip, every memory of a life lived on his terms. And so he waited, a pirate in exile, the anklet a shackle he wore like a badge, the flat a ship adrift on London streets, his spirit sailing free, unbowed, unbroken, Jack Sparrow's legacy burning bright in every strum, every defiant laugh that echoed through the night, a testament to a man who'd rather break than bend, who'd rather fight than forget, who'd rather be cuffed than conform, forever the captain of his own wild, unruly soul, a legend forged in chaos, tempered in confinement, and destined to endure long after the headlines faded, the fines were paid, and the world moved on, leaving him, and Jack, still standing, still sailing, still free in the only way that mattered. Weeks turned to months, the ankle monitor a constant companion, its beep a rhythm he'd learned to ignore, and Johnny's flat became a world unto itself, a pirate's lair where time blurred, the outside world reduced to muffled sounds beyond the walls, delivery boys dropping off groceries, the distant wail of sirens, the chatter of Camden's punks and poets drifting up from the street below, his days a cycle of music, painting, rum, and restless pacing, his nights a descent into dreams of open seas, creaking decks, and the clink of gold, Jack Sparrow's voice whispering in his ear, urging him to hold fast, to keep the faith, to never let the bastards win. He'd taken to talking to Jack aloud, late at night when the rum hit hardest, sprawled on the floor amid scattered canvases, his voice rough as he muttered, "They think they've got us, mate, think a bit, oh, tin round me ankle killed the pirate in me. But we're tougher than that, ain't we?" The words slurring into the dark, the flat shadows dancing in the candlelight, a one-sided conversation that kept him sane, kept him tethered to the man he'd been, the man he still was, the man he'd died before. Abandoning, the pirate's spirit a lifeline through the monotony, a beacon in the fog of his confinement. The press, insatiable as ever, kept the story alive, paparazzi lurking outside his flat, their cameras flashing through the curtains, headlines evolving from Depp's meltdown to Pirate in Chains, Johnny Depp's house arrest drama, speculating wildly about his state, some calling him a tragic figure, others a reckless fool. But Johnny ignored it all, refused the interviews Hargrove begged him to give. Let the world spin its tales, knowing none of them could touch the truth, none of them could. See the fire still burning, the pirates still sailing, the man still standing defiant in the face of their judgment, his silence a rebellion louder than any brawl. Hargrove, ever the optimist, pushed for a resolution, his voice crackling through the phone one gray afternoon, detailing a plea deal, community service, a fine, an apology to Hawthorne, that could end the house arrest early. But Johnny cut him off, sprawled on the sofa, bottle in hand, growling, apologize. To that git? I'd sooner walk the plank than grovel. Jack don't bend, and neither do I. His tone final, his faith in Sparrow unshaken, the lawyer sighing in defeat, knowing his client was a storm no court could tame, a man who'd rather rot in Camden than bow to the world's demands, the anklet a badge of honor, not shame. The flat's walls, once a comfort, began to chafe, the velvet curtains heavy with dust, the guitars silent some days, the rum tasting bitter, and Johnny felt the weight of his exile, the pirate spirit straining against the confines, his pacing growing frantic, his psalms darker, his paintings wilder, ships sinking, skies bleeding red, a figure in a tricorn hat standing alone against the storm, his voice hoarse as he sang. They've caged the bird, but not the psalm. Jack's still here, still strong, still sailing where he belongs, the words a mantra, a shield, a promise to himself that this wasn't the end, that the pirate would outlast the anklet, the trial, the world's scorn, a vow etched in every stroke, every note, every sip that kept him alive. One evening, as autumn bled into winter, a package arrived, slipped under the door by an unseen hand, a battered box wrapped in brown paper, no note, no sender, and Johnny tore it open, finding inside a miniature ship, a perfect replica of the Black Pearl, its sails tattered, its hull scarred, a gift from some unknown ally, a talisman that made him laugh, a raw, ragged sound, as he set it on the mantel, muttering, she's still afloat, ain't she, Jack? The ship a symbol, a spark, a reminder. That Sparrow's world endured, that he endured, that the pirate's legacy wasn't buried under fines and cuffs but lived in him, in this flat, in every breath he took, a beacon through the long, cold nights of his confinement. The trial date crept closer, a shadow growing sharper, and Hargrove's calls grew urgent. Dates, depositions, Hawthorne's latest demands. But Johnny tuned it out, stood on his balcony as snow dusted Camden, strumming a slow tune, his voice low. They can judge me, chain me, curse me name, jackals sail on, all the same, the city glittering below, the canal of frozen thread, the pirate unbroken, the man unbowed, the storm within him raging on, a tempest no court could quell, no anklet could silence, no director could kill, a fire that burned through the winter, through the exile, through the world's attempts to snuff it out. Johnny Depp and Jack Sparrow, one and the same, forever defiant, forever free in the only way that mattered, a legend carved in chaos, tempered in confinement, destined to endure long after the gavel fell, the headlines faded, and the world moved on, leaving them, together, still standing, still sailing, still alive.